In this episode of Quakers Today, we ask, what does Quakerism have to offer society in 2024?
Jessica Jacobs, a queer Jewish poet, tells us about her new collection of poems, Unalone, Poems in Conversation with the Book of Genesis. She will read one of her poems for us.
We also explore prefigurative practice in a Quaker classroom. What is prefigurative practice? It's a little like time travel. We will hear from Zoe Levenstein, a high school student from Germantown Friends School, and her history teacher, Sam Thacker.
Zoe and Sam will not only tell us about how they imagined the future, but also reveal how they lived in it. I am Peterson Toscano.
And I'm Miche McCall.
This is Season 3, Episode 5 of the Quakers Today podcast, a project of Friends Publishing Corporation.
This season of Quakers Today is sponsored by the American Friends Service Committee.
What is your relationship with time travel?
Some people might be reluctant to travel to the past because of their identities and bodies. Creative writers who have historically experienced oppression often have opted instead to travel to the future through science fiction.
A high school history class at Germantown Friends School did something a little different. As they studied the past, they chose to create the classroom of the future. Their teacher, Sam Thacker, refers to this as prefigurative practice.
Drawn from anarchist thought, prefigurative practice is a way of doing things based on two notions. The first is that we don't have to wait to build institutions that will help realize the change we wish to see in the world. The other is that the institutions and practices we develop along the way ought to embody our ultimate vision. Put another way, prefigurative practice aligns its means for achieving change with the end sought.
That's Sam Thacker, reading from his article, Let Your Schools Speak, The Power of Prefigurative Practice in Friends Education. It appears in the August 2024 issue of Friends Journal.
If, for example, we are working toward a just, inclusive future, our institutions now should be just and inclusive. Prefigurative practice is proactive, courageous, and true to itself. In Quaker parlance, its life speaks. Friends Education in this conception honors every learner's unique gifts, offering learning experiences that speak to differences and tap into the power of a group's diversity. It radiates an infectious love for truth and an openness to continuing revelation.
Sam speaks glowingly of the experience.
I was really jazzed by it. It was very empowering, I think. It really says, hey, we don't need to wait for anything. If we're very unhappy with kind of our mainstream politics, our mainstream government, the way things are in general, there's nothing stopping us from just going out there and starting something different, doing something very tangible that does align with whatever set of values you would really like to see advanced in the world, or whatever type of work you would like to see advanced in the world. It was sort of revelatory to me in that regard. And then I started sort of thinking about how it applied to work as a teacher.
Sam named the course Another World is Possible. In it, his students studied hopeful, ambitious visions for change and strategies for achieving them.
They read the writings of George and Barrett Lakey, Joanna Macy, and Rebecca Solnit. They also studied Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy.
But what do his students think?
Even at a Quaker school, there is much more of an even playing ground between teachers and students. This felt like an elevated version of that, where students really did have the opportunity to voice exactly how they felt about what we were learning about.
That's Zoe Levenstein.
I'm going into 11th grade at Germantown Friends School. I'm an environmentalist. I am a lesbian, and I am very interested in Quakerism.
Zoe appreciated the new authors she encountered in the class, especially Adrienne Marie Brown.
The way that they write is just so radical to read, especially in their prose. There was talk of like animism and thinking about how structures of power or structures of activism correspond to structures we see in nature, which I found really interesting. Reading these types of texts helped me and my classmates imagine a world that's not structured the way that our world is currently structured.
Sam facilitated projects that allowed his students to stretch their creativity and imagination.
we did a puppet show at the end of the course, imagining a different world, or like what the world would look like in 1,000 years, I think it was. In our puppet show, it was something like about a very decentralized government where some people were like hairdressers, but then some people were like scavengers. It was very fantastic. It felt kind of like fantasy sci-fi, but it was really fun.
The values that sort of underlie my notion of prefigurative practice as a teacher are really trying to offer an alternative learning experience that forces really students to engage with their learning on different terms, to really kind of step up and engage with the course and with each other in a way that's very personal and helps them build what I think is probably a more authentic relationship to the subject matter. When you're going for something that is sort of countercultural or is against what students are sort of used to, or what people are used to in general, there's some resistance there. You know, there's a learning curve.
After taking this class, Zoe has a clear picture of the future she wants to pursue.
I imagine a world where everyone is engaged, because I think what really dampers my hope a lot is that it seems like people don't care. In 20 years, my hope would be that even on the street level, I see people actively working to help each other. I also kind of imagine a world where song and music is more incorporated, and like group singing, because I think it just kind of boosts the mood. I imagine a world in which doing activities like that is more encouraged. Yeah, I think it all comes down to like human connection, and that makes people care.
They spent time in the classroom of the future and imagined the society that they want to live in. Is that just a pleasant escape from the real world we're in today? Zoe describes that longing for a better, more just world leads to action.
Well, I'm already thinking about going into climate policy work, and I have been since I joined there's another initiative Sam started, which is the Campus Climate Coalition, which is faculty and students and other community members as a collective. So we organize community potlucks, which are like plastic-free potlucks. We had a campaign called Use Less Plastic or Useless Plastic to try to have people trash their plastic so our recycling stream is more pure. The most successful was we did a clothing swap, which people love. We do them in the fall and in the spring, and we've had 4 so far, and it's been great. And those like initiatives have really inspired me to work in climate in the future or in climate justice. This class really solidified that for me.
Sam Thacker reasons that prefigurative practice is nothing new for Quakers, and that it easily extends beyond the classroom setting.
We have this foundation, it's laid out there. So what can we do as Quaker schools, or as Quaker meetings for that matter, or as Quaker organizations? What can we do that would both work toward bringing desired changes about in the world, but also like we can do this now? I see Quaker institutions as examples of prefigurative practice by and large. I mean, in my article, I discuss meetings for business. Quaker meetings are prefigurative, both in their organization, both in the form of worship. Prefigurative practice is vital. Like we have to live these alternatives and try them out and experiment with them and try to bring other people into them too. There are so many things where fundamentally better ways of being together and being in institutions that I think will speak to so many different people too, once they sort of experience it.
Another World is Possible was kind of marketed in the world of prefigurative practice without exactly using that word. It's not a term that most people know.
That was Zoe Levenstein, a high school student at Germantown Friends School, and her history teacher, Sam Thacker. Sam designed the course, Another World is Possible.
He wrote the article, Let Your Schools Speak, The Power of Prefigurative Practice in Friends Education. It appears in the August 2024 issue of Friends Journal. You can read it for free at friendsjournal.org. And here's Sam Thacker and his band, Double Truck.
Lay down purple dreams, so undefined. Lay down in silver shades of time. Even with the broken things, it's all alright. Falling in the purple dreams tonight.
In preparing the show, we read the August 2024 Friends Journal book reviews. Michael S. Glazier commented on Jessica Jacobs' new book of poetry, Unalone, Poems in Conversation with the Book of Genesis. He wrote, "Many of these poems quite literally took my breath away with their startling insights and explications of biblical texts in ways that not only make perfect experiential sense, but also break through the crusty standard interpretations that have left us unsatisfied in the past."
As a Bible geek who loves poetry, I had to read it for myself. Then I said to Miche, let's invite Jessica Jacobs to come on the show.
And Jessica agreed. She told us a little bit about herself and her new collection of poems.
And she read one of her poems for us.
I am a writer, a teacher, and an editor, and I'm also the founder of Yetzirah, Hearth for Jewish Poetry, which is the first literary organization in the country supporting Jewish poets. I am a Jewish woman, I'm a queer woman, I am an athlete, I am someone who loves to be outside, for whom community is very deeply important to me, personally and professionally. I grew up in a secular Jewish household and really walked away from religion for most of my life. And then in my 30s, read the Torah all the way through. I had some really big questions that writing really brought up for me. I was shocked by how that text spoke so directly to my life and to the world around me. So I spent the next 7 years immersed in deep study of the book of Genesis. This new collection, Unalone, is conversations with the book of Genesis. There's a joke that if you ask 10 rabbis a question, you'll get 11 answers. There's not really a set idea of the afterlife, but one of the ideas is that there's something called Gehenna, which instead of hell is almost like kind of a limbo, but it's a limbo in which you have time to reflect and perform teshuvah, which is repentance, and see yourself more clearly, perhaps before going on to a better realm. So that was a big part of this. And just thinking about, what does that mean? What does that mean to see yourself that clearly? And this is actually responding to a photograph by the photographer Leslie Dill, who took a photograph of a woman's throat with a line from Emily Dickinson, which you'll hear in the second section. "I am afraid to own a body. I am afraid to own a soul." This poem is really in response to that idea and that image. Prayers from a dark room. Gehenna. If hell is less fiery furnace than a mirrored room with all the lights left on, with nowhere to hide that what burns is within us, all the guilt and sorrow from which we now can't look away, then let us accept our faces as they are. Let us remember that one word, doliket, means both in flames and full of light, and know our pain can be a source of sight. I am afraid to own a body. I am afraid to own a soul. In Eden, garments of light sufficed, each human a lantern lit from within, inextricable from their ignition. But now, banished, this dim skin suit, by which the spirit is dimmed to firefly. Such faint flares, such cold glow. Lonely lighthouses, each of us. We blink, we beacon, we long to chorus, we wait for a blaze in return until there. Allied, we pulse one to the next, bind in divine synchrony. For a moment, the whole planet a field of fallen stars. And from this ensemble bonfire, like smoke scorching from the narrows of a throat, our fears. A cry for not ownership, but communion. A cry to be answered with expanse, of air, of wind, of ruach, that God breath, gentling in toward every torn thing, its breach, however meager, moving leaf into leaves, melding body to soul, making of every opening a mouth, and setting us all to singing. Can you hear it? A torch song for the kindred world, this fleeting one we're searching for. Prayer for the word made light. Bathe the window within us in photosensitive silver. Let us aperture. Let us dilate. What lasts is what is found by light. Negatives of the divine, let us enter the stop bath of the ordinary world. Where we are most vulnerable, most exposed, that's what makes the print. We become what is burned into us, what we open ourselves to.
That was poet Jessica Jacobs reading the poem Prayers from a Dark Room. It appears in her book, Unalone, Poems in Conversation with the Book of Genesis.
Learn more about Jessica and her other writings by visiting jessicalgjacobs.com. That's jessicalgjacobs.com. You can read Michael S. Glazer's full review at friendsjournal.org.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Quakers Today. Quakers Today is written and produced by me, Peterson Toscano.
And me, Miche McCall. Music on today's show comes from Epidemic Sound. And earlier in the episode, you heard a song by Sam Thacker and his band Double Truck. You can find more of their music at 2xtruck.bandcamp.com.
Season 3 of Quakers Today is sponsored by American Friends Service Committee.
Do you want to challenge unjust systems and promote lasting peace? The American Friends Service Committee, or AFSC, works with communities worldwide to drive social change. Their website features meaningful steps that you can take to make a difference.
Through their Friends Liaison program, you can connect your meeting or church with AFSC and their justice campaigns.
Find out how you can become part of AFSC's global community of changemakers. Visit afsc.org. That's afsc.org.
Visit quakerstoday.org to see our show notes and a full transcript of this episode.
And if you stick around after the closing, you'll hear listeners' responses to the question, what does Quakerism have to offer society in 2024?
Thank you, friend. We look forward to being with you again soon.
Thank you.
Miche, hearing Sam and Zoe talk about living in the future they want to co-create got me excited about our co-creation, the season finale of Quakers Today podcast. You and I share some important passions and identities.
True. We are both Quakers, and we're both queer. I describe myself as truly non-committal in the gender and sexuality department. I'm a non-binary bisexual, and I use they/them pronouns.
And I am a femme-leaning cisgender gay man, or as I like to refer to myself, a sissy. And that's spelled with a C. I use he, him pronouns.
Amazing. We are both obsessed with climate change.
Yes.
And with finding creative ways to address its many issues.
So Miche and I decided that we would mash all these personal elements together and we are creating a show that explores queer Quaker responses to climate change. Joining us will be other queer Quakers concerned about climate change. That's hard to say, actually. We're like a whole cohort now.
Don't worry if you're not queer or a Quaker or even concerned about climate change. We're working on an episode that will be engaging for all. The episode airs on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. In a moment, you'll hear listeners' voicemails about what Quakerism has to offer society in 2024.
But first, we're going to share next month's questions with you. Here are the questions. What is a Quaker response to climate change? And what is a queer Quaker response to climate change?
Climate change is a huge topic that needs serious attention. How we communicate the world we want to co-create while tackling its causes and impacts matters. By looking at climate change-related issues through multiple lenses, we can discover fresh ways of responding.
Now, you may already be part of a creative effort to address climate change, or you may enjoy this thought experiment as you imagine Quakers and queer Quakers influencing the climate movement.
What is a Quaker response to climate change? And what is a queer Quaker response to climate change? Answer whichever you want, or both.
Leave a voicemail with your name and your town. The number to call is 317-Quakers. That's 317-782-5377. 317-Quakers. +1 if calling from outside the USA.
You can also respond to this question on one of our social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and X. I have these contact details in our show notes over at quakerstoday.org.
Now we hear answers to the question, what does Quakerism have to offer society in 2024?
Peterson, we received many responses on our various social media channels.
Yeah, those channels are really poppin'.
I know. Quakers are online. Luap Iasi said, Quakers have a great deal to offer to the current generation. True spirituality that surpasses all understanding. I'm talking about the true Bible-based spirituality that wholly submits to the leading of the Holy Spirit. Lori Pinheiro-Satinsky said, a practice of pausing, a practice of listening. The lack of both of these in everyday U.S. culture contributes to the growing inability to be in community across differences. Pete Siebert wrote, a proven history of offering silence before speaking. Chris Yates simply states, decency. Alessandra Smith says, that link between faith or spirituality and everyday human diversity. Among the current tide of divisive far-right voices appropriating the name of Christianity to drive wedges among people, I think Quakers have a real role to play in continuing to speak for who we and others are and bringing community together. Quakers are a force for empathy, and that is what the world needs, a shed load more of in the here and now.
Yeah, you have to be careful how you say that one. A shed load.
Shed load. And Ben Wood said, a reminder of God's love for the world, a recollection of a larger life which is always longing to meet us. Blue heart emoji, fire emoji.
We also received voicemail responses and answers from people who attended the 2024 Friends General Conference gathering.
My name's Eric Seidner. I live in Philadelphia. The Quaker testimonies about peace and integrity are kind of timeless, although I'm feeling that they're particularly maybe needed more right now in 2024, when there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation going around. Quakers are really, in my view, on a search for truth, a quest for truth, and trying to look at everything and find out what is really real and true about the world. Quakers do a very good job at following the teachings of Christ. I was not brought up a Quaker. I was brought up in the Methodist Church. Christ was teaching about living a life of love and peace and kindness. And I don't see that being the dominant way that people live their lives in the United States right now. And I'd like us to move honestly towards that. Another thing about Quakers is the idea of continuing revelation, that we haven't all figured everything out yet. There isn't the final word on God and the universe and the world and everything. And we are trying to understand it. And again, with integrity, trying to understand and find the truth.
Hi, I'm Levi, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia. The short answer is speaking truth with love. And I think what I mean by that is there's a real need in our society to be able to connect to people and to reach out and understand experiences better in order for us to be able to really address the underlying inequalities and destructive practices that we all engage in, including me. In order to do that, though, like, we need to have more connection and more trust. And yeah, that, like, we need more truth-telling as part of that, and we need to practice that skill. Quakers do a lot of practicing that skill, and we do it often in community where we practice it with love, and I think that is something we can offer. And I think there's a connection there to some of the lessons from deep canvassing, in terms of like having extended conversations with people about their lives and values and your own life and values. That's, something that the research shows actually moves people on political and policy issues, but particularly policy issues, in a way that like a lot of the rest of what we do doesn't move people's opinions on policy issues. I think there's some connection there between like the idea of speaking truth with love and with deep canvassing that like we can offer to the world and we could practice more.
Hello, my name is Makayama Landau. I'm a member of Brooklyn Meeting. I don't know if it's Quakerism, but I think the big thing for me is friendship. We, as Quakers or as people or as human beings, have a gift of being able to be friends with each other and friends that accept each other as they are, with loving generosity and grace and courage and interest and intrigue and the sense of being there for our friends, even the people we've just met, because the potential for anyone and everyone to become a friend is a huge gift of Quakerism. So in 2024, in this time when people are stressed and worried and isolated, this sense of I can be your friend because you are beautiful exactly as you are is a real thing that Quakerism can offer society. That radical acceptance and generosity of spirit and the potential for everyone and anyone to be a friend with no strings attached, no judgment, and no qualifiers on it. It's just you are who you are, and that makes me want to be your friend. Thank you. And wishing everyone well. Blessings to you all. Thank you.
Penelope, Ridgecrest, California. Quakers Today says that it seeks wisdom and understanding in a rapidly changing world. I think that would help with the divisions within our country and to help unify the citizens of our nation. We need to have compassion to people with differing views. Many of us have been taken in by false information and scams. Thank you.